as a backline amp, you didn't get precisely what you wanted to get, because it's shit. We're playing country today. Yes. Yes, we put on the pedal to get a clean sound. How ridiculous isn't that? This actually started with a guy that was playing something like a Soldano amp, but he wanted to, on some gigs, play country with that, with the same setup, and it didn't actually work. None of it worked. But it was an interesting concept. Could one do that? And the thing is, you can do all kinds of, as one has been doing since the 70s. You could put all kinds of electronics on the controllers on your guitar to get rid of the treble loss when you turn down the volume and such. You can also do specific things, so you can tune it to the cable if you wish. Lots of. But this pedal actually has, it's an EQ. So it means that what you can do, we have now turned down the mid-range, and that's the actually broad part of the mid-range. And that's where the meaty part of a guitar, specifically one like this, the really meaty part is in the mid-range. So if we reduce that, we suddenly cannot overdrive the amplifier in the same way. And by an odd coincidence, back in the 1950s, the technicians at the Gibson plant discovered that if they cut out some of the mid-range, they could run their amplifiers louder than before, because without distortion, and they would at the same time compensate for the natural fall of the treble in a guitar pickup. This one allows partly to lower the mid-range if you wish. You also can compensate with the bass and treble and volume and set it more or less where you like. This is like a custom tuning. I'd say after having done numerous things on guitars with electronics, like putting capacitors and resistors inside guitars to make the pickups work in a certain way, I would say that this is still easily the most eloquent tool, because you can access things that would be very difficult to do with inside a guitar. You can, of course, use this ahead of a fuzz, if you wish. Not all fuzzes can accept that, but if we can have another small chord, I can show this. some which could possibly make it slightly easier if we were that actually freed my hand from the volume control.
Yeah. If you use fuzz face, if you volume control on the fuzz face, you usually get like a little bit too much high end. You can't control how much you get it.
Right. The fuzz face is. You don't happen to have one? And actually, that touches on another subject. We don't really want to have a totally clean sound. If you want really clean sound, you can either play through this through the stereo or through this Dynacord Rex. It's interesting. It's an interesting thing with playing dynamics that you have something that is set on the distortion level, because then you have something that doesn't. If you strike hard, the transient will not go immensely loud, but at the same time you can have and of course you could work your volume control, but sometimes your right hand is busy waving to the public, which is actually, I think we need a little bit more
really
volume and a little bit more bass to do that. We can actually have a little bit more volume, even so.
Yeah.
For the first part of this lecture, we talked about the meat of guitar sound, and much of that is in the mid range. But if we now we have nothing that we can turn up the volume. And that actually, I talked about earlier what happened at the Gibson factory with the that they discovered that they could drive their amplifiers louder if they reduced some of the mid-range. And now we'll check out what happens with this. He said that we could. These are all controls on full. But what if we would just set it? Or we could even increase a little more and just because just for this. And then the bass strings distorted in a certain way, actually very that reminds me of the way a Fender amp would distort. They kind of, but they're holding together. It's not the sound that you play chords on. But I put this somewhere in by doing that, we have a sound that is not the same as. Check. actually gives a different idea what to play just because of the sound. What I wanted to show with this is that you don't one could of course set this cleaner than I did now, but I was also with this, what if one would increase the mid-range just a tiny bit further even, like this. And here shows exactly the point where what I was hinting at with, if you reduce the mid-range just a tiny bit, you can actually approach, in this case we're actually limited by the fuzz, but we could play louder with still having the same kind of message. When you work with telephone lines, you work with the intelligible part, and it's actually the same thing with the fuzz guitar, because in this case we can still hear the chords, even though they are distorting. Is anybody upset about the distorting? This makes that particular setting that I've made there would be very difficult to synthesize in a guitar, even though you could, but it would be difficult. But it can make a new world of sounds where you have a fuzz sound and then you have something that it doesn't really sound like a fuzz sound. It sounds like a distorting amplifier, maybe something if we're lucky. At least if we were listening to recorded sounds of, well, it's just the 60s and 70s and onwards. This particular sound got more interesting to use with the advent of Stevie Ray Vaughan, for instance, that would, play loud and almost clean, but there's slightly into distortion. But would really use fuzz. I don't think I've heard many recordings with that. But it's just saying that it can open a new set of usage for fuzz, and also for distorted amplifiers.